The crystal chandeliers of the St. Regis ballroom blazed, a dazzling mirage reflecting in the polished floors. Heavy with the suffocating scent of forced roses and expensive champagne, the air vibrated with the hushed expectancy of Manhattan's elite. Tonight, Evelyn was supposed to ascend. She and Daniel would announce their engagement tonight, solidifying her family's legacy. A knot of anticipation tightened in her stomach, a thrill laced with barely contained dread. Where was he? Daniel, her fiancé, was characteristically late. Fashionably, her mother would have corrected. He was, after all, a rising titan in finance, a shark with impeccable tailoring and a ruthless streak. A suitable match. Evelyn nervously adjusted the exquisite lace of her ice blue gown, its fabric whispering against her skin. She glanced at her parents, their faces masks of practiced charm as they schmoozed with influential guests, their ambition for her palpable. They had orchestrated this union, ensured its success. A shiver crawled down her spine. Where was he? Then, the ballroom doors exploded inward. Every head swiveled, conversations died mid-sentence. And there he was, Daniel, silhouetted against the doorway, hand in hand not with Evelyn, but with another woman. Evelyn's breath hitched, her vision blurring. A collective gasp ripped through the room. A waiter, frozen mid-pour, watched champagne cascade uselessly onto a pristine tablecloth. Paparazzi cameras, vultures disguised as press, flashed, documenting Evelyn's public crucifixion. It was Lisa Carter, the viperish daughter of Daniel's most powerful business partner. Her scarlet gown, a second skin of brazen confidence, screamed defiance. A cruel smile twisted her lips. Daniel, beside her, displayed a chilling apathy. He still held Lisa's hand. Evelyn, paralyzed, forced a strangled whisper, "Daniel?" He stopped mere feet away, his eyes, usually so warm and promising, now glacial. With a deliberate, soul-crushing cruelty, he delivered his verdict, "Evelyn, I can't marry you." The words slammed into her like a physical blow. The air itself seemed to solidify, pressing down on her. Her throat closed, air scraping against her vocal cords as she croaked, What are you saying?" Daniel exhaled, a dismissive sigh as if addressing a minor inconvenience. "Let's be brutally honest, Evelyn. You bring nothing to the table." Her stomach churned, bile rising. I don't understand." "You proposed." A flicker of something that wasn't quite a smile played on his lips. "Did I? Or was it a transaction? A carefully calculated arrangement between our families?" His eyes were cold, assessing. "I needed the leverage of your family's name. But now—" He trailed off, his gaze sliding to Lisa, who purred, squeezing his arm. "Now, I have better options." Lisa's laugh was a silken rasp. "He means me, darling." Evelyn felt the world tilting. This is a joke, right?" The plea in her voice was pathetic, desperate. Daniel's features hardened, the mask of charm completely dissolving. "I never loved you, Evelyn," he spat, each word a shard of ice. "You were merely a stepping stone. And I no longer require your services." A gasp pierced the suffocating silence. Someone, somewhere, dropped a glass. Evelyn's hands trembled uncontrollably as she searched his face, desperately seeking any flicker of humanity, any sign that this wasn't happening. But Daniel only smirked. Lisa tilted her head, a false sympathy oozing from her voice. "You're a sweet girl, Evelyn, but let's face it, you simply don't belong in Daniel's world. You never did." A wave of icy numbness washed over Evelyn. Hundreds of eyes, predatory and gleeful, bored into her, dissecting her humiliation. She could practically taste the whispers, "Poor girl. So embarrassing." Did she think he loved her? Then, her mother's voice, a stiletto to the heart, sliced through the cacophony. "Evelyn." Evelyn turned, clinging to the desperate hope that her mother, for once, would offer solace. But the look on her mother's face wasn't concern, it was withering disgust. "You have humiliated us," she hissed, her voice a low, venomous rasp. The final, crushing blow. Evelyn stumbled backward, her world disintegrating. Her mother turned away, abandoning her to the wolves. Alone. Shattered. The streets of Manhattan at night were a predatory maze, especially when you were adrift in a gown that felt like a costume, a mocking reminder of a life that had vanished. Evelyn's heels clicked against the unforgiving pavement, each step a sharp, relentless counterpoint to the hollowness inside her. Her feet throbbed, the delicate shoes turning into instruments of torture, but she couldn't stop. She wouldn't stop. Each time she closed her eyes, Daniel's words, a brutal mantra, echoed in her mind, "I never loved you." And then, her mother's voice, a phantom blade twisting in her already lacerated heart, "You are no longer a daughter of mine." A choked sob escaped her lips. The crisp night air burned her lungs, mirroring the agony in her chest. The diamond engagement ring, once a symbol of hope, was gone, discarded on the cold, unforgiving marble of the ballroom floor. She was stripped bare, devoid of fiancé, family, and future. Lost, she wandered, until the warm, inviting glow of a dimly lit bar beckoned her. It wasn't the kind of establishment she would ever consider gracing, a haven of worn leather, fading neon, and the ghosts of forgotten dreams. But tonight, she didn't care. Tonight, she craved oblivion. The bartender, his face etched with years of silent observation, barely glanced at her as she slid onto a cracked stool. Her dress screamed of privilege against the bar's gritty reality. "Whiskey," she rasped, her voice raw. "Neat." He raised a questioning eyebrow, then wordlessly poured her a generous measure before retreating into the shadows. Evelyn downed the first sip, the fiery liquid searing its way down her throat, a welcome burn against the chilling emptiness inside. "You don't strike me as a whiskey woman," a voice, smooth as aged bourbon, deep as a hidden cavern, cut through the gloom. It was laced with an intriguing curiosity. Evelyn turned, her gaze colliding with a man seated a few stools away. He wasn't the polished, predictable specimen she was accustomed to. No tailored suit, no ostentatious watch. Instead, he wore a simple, dark jacket over a plain gray t-shirt. His hair was slightly disheveled, hinting at a rebellious spirit. But his eyes, they were striking, a deep, unreadable obsidian, as if they held secrets that defied comprehension. "Maybe I wasn't before," Evelyn muttered, taking another swallow. "But people change." He tilted his head, studying her with an unnerving intensity. "Rough night?" A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "You could say that." And then, inexplicably, she found herself pouring out her story, the whiskey loosening the vice grip on her chest. She recounted the betrayal, the humiliation, the abandonment. She didn't understand why she was confiding in him. Perhaps it was the anonymity, the knowledge that he was a blank slate, free from judgment. The man listened, his dark eyes unwavering, his silence a comforting presence. When she finished, he leaned closer, resting his elbows on the worn bar. "If you need a husband," he said, his voice nonchalant, "I'm right here." Evelyn blinked, then erupted in genuine laughter, a sound that felt foreign and cathartic. "You," she teased, her eyes glimmering with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "You want to marry me?" He smiled, a slow, lazy curve of his lips that sent a shiver down her spine. "Why not? You need a husband. I don't have anything better to do." It was madness. Utter, unadulterated insanity. Yet, something flickered within her, a spark of defiance, a desperate need for control. Perhaps it was the alcohol, the heartbreak, perhaps the sheer audacity of the offer. She lifted her glass in a mock toast, a reckless grin spreading across her face. "All right, stranger," she said, her voice tinged with both hysteria and exhilaration. "Let's get married." Evelyn awoke with a pounding headache and a creeping sense of impending doom. The sheets beneath her were not the silken luxury of her penthouse. The air carried the unfamiliar scent of cheap coffee and something vaguely fried. And then she saw it, glinting in the weak morning light, a cheap silver ring encircling her left ring finger. Her stomach plummeted. What had she done? She turned her head slowly, dreading what she would find. And there he was, the stranger from the bar, Liam, lying beside her. shirtless, one arm draped casually across his chest, his breathing deep and steady. Evelyn gasped, scrambling away. What the hell had she done? She sat on the edge of the worn-out couch, her eyes frantically scanning the cramped apartment. Peeling paint clung to the walls, the dim lighting casting long, grotesque shadows. This was her new reality. Her new home. She still couldn't fathom how she had spiraled from silk sheets and marble floors to this tiny, cluttered space with its creaking floorboards and a kitchenette barely fit for one. How she had gone from Evelyn Davenport, the glamorous fiancé of a wealthy businessman, to Evelyn, whatever her last name was now. She glanced down at the cheap silver ring, half expecting it to vanish, to erase this surreal nightmare. But it remained, a stark reminder of her impulsive decision. Then, a movement from the cramped kitchenette. She turned to see Liam, her husband, the stranger she had drunkenly pledged her life to, standing by the stove. He was clad only in a pair of faded sweatpants, his back to her as he flipped something in a pan. The tantalizing aroma of buttery eggs and toast filled the small space, making her stomach rumble despite her anxiety. Before she could formulate a coherent thought, Liam glanced over his shoulder, catching her staring. "Morning, wifey," he said, a mischievous smirk playing on his lips. Evelyn groaned, burying her face in her hands. "I was desperately hoping this was all a bad dream," she mumbled. Liam chuckled. "Nope. It's real. You married a stranger. Congrats." Evelyn peeked through her fingers. "And you're completely okay with this?" He shrugged, nonchalantly placing 2 plates laden with scrambled eggs and toast on the tiny dining table. "I'm a man of my word. You needed a husband. I delivered." Evelyn exhaled sharply, shaking her head in disbelief. "This is insane." Liam slid into the chair across from her, watching her with an unreadable expression. "Eat first. Then we can discuss the magnitude of your life choices and how much you regret them." She scowled at him but picked up her fork anyway. The stark reality of her situation began to sink in with each bite. She was cut off. No access to her family's fortune, no designer clothes, no army of servants to cater to her every whim. She had to wash dishes, do laundry, and, most terrifyingly of all, she had to budget. She, Evelyn Davenport, had never budgeted in her life. The first time she accompanied Liam to the grocery store, she instinctively reached for a $12 bottle of organic water, only to be met with a raised eyebrow and a firm hand guiding it back to the shelf. "You're not a Davenport anymore, princess," he said, tossing a 99-cent bottle into the cart instead. "Welcome to the real world." Evelyn huffed, resisting the urge to argue. It was humiliating, frustrating, and yet, strangely, liberating. For the first time, there were no suffocating expectations, no relentless pressure to be the perfect socialite, no judgmental eyes scrutinizing her every move. And then there was Liam. He wasn't like the men she knew, the ones who flaunted their wealth, who measured their worth in dollar signs. Liam was different. Despite his playful teasing, he never let her truly struggle. When she incinerated their dinner, he simply laughed and ordered takeout. When she tripped over a loose floorboard, he was there to steady her. And one rainy evening, when the power flickered out, plunging their apartment into darkness, and she sat curled on the couch, feeling more lost than ever, Liam simply grabbed a thick blanket, draped it around her shoulders, and sat beside her in comfortable silence. He didn't offer pity, just understanding. And slowly, very slowly, Evelyn began to realize that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as lost as she thought. Evelyn had always prided herself on her keen perception of people. Growing up in high society, she had learned to decipher the subtle cues, the way someone carried themselves, the slight hesitation in their voice when they lied, the predatory glint in their eyes when they desired something. But Liam was an enigma. At first, she had accepted his facade of normalcy, his portrayal of an ordinary guy living paycheck to paycheck, indifferent to luxury. But subtle discrepancies began to surface, nagging at the back of her mind. It started with the wine. One evening, Liam brought home a bottle of red wine, nothing extravagant, just a generic brand from the corner store. Evelyn, accustomed to scrutinizing vintages and terroirs, couldn't resist a playful jab. "Let me guess," she teased, "you're strictly a beer man, aren't you?" Liam chuckled enigmatically but remained silent as he uncorked the bottle and poured himself a glass. Then, to her utter astonishment, he swirled the wine, examined its color against the light, inhaled deeply, and took a sip with the practiced finesse of a seasoned sommelier. Evelyn's brows furrowed in bewilderment. "What was that?" Liam raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. "What was what?" She gestured at his glass. That was a proper wine-tasting technique." Liam simply smirked. "Maybe I just appreciate good wine." Evelyn narrowed her eyes. "Normal guys don't do that." Then there was the car incident. A few days later, as they strolled past a luxury car dealership, she had casually inquired, "If you could have any car in the world, what would it be?" Liam barely hesitated. "Aston Martin DBS Superleggera," he replied matter-of-factly. V12 engine, 715 horsepower, top speed of 211 miles per hour. Evelyn stared at him, dumbfounded. Most men she knew wouldn't even recognize the car, let alone recite its specifications. Liam noticed her stunned expression and shrugged dismissively. "What? I like cars." Evelyn let it slide, chalking it up to an odd coincidence. But then came the money. One evening, while Liam was showering, Evelyn was rummaging through their kitchen drawer, desperately searching for a pen. In the back, hidden beneath a stack of takeout menus, she discovered it, a thick wad of crisp $100 bills. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Liam was broke, wasn't he? They meticulously budgeted for groceries, lived in a dilapidated apartment, and only indulged in takeout on special occasions. So where did this money come from? She carefully picked up the stack, her fingers tracing the smooth texture of the paper. It wasn't just a few stray bills. There had to be at least $10,000 nestled in that drawer. Before she could process the implications, Liam's voice startled her from behind. "Looking for something?" Evelyn jumped, nearly dropping the money. Liam leaned against the doorway, a towel slung around his neck, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. She turned to him, her eyes wide with confusion and suspicion. "Where did this come from?" Liam simply walked over, retrieved the stack of bills, and placed it back in the drawer, closing it with a decisive snap, leaving her standing there, speechless. "Liam," she pressed, her voice trembling. He finally met her gaze, that same infuriating smirk playing on his lips. "Does it matter?" Evelyn blinked, her confusion mounting. "Of course it matters. We live like we can barely afford rent, and you have stacks of cash just lying around?" Liam shrugged dismissively. "I don't like wasting money." "That's not an answer." He chuckled, stepping closer, invading her personal space. "Didn't you marry me because you loved me for who I am, not for what I have?" Evelyn's breath hitched. That was what she had said, that money didn't matter, that she didn't care about wealth. But now, standing before him, knowing he was withholding something, she felt a profound sense of unease. Liam lifted her chin slightly with his fingers, his voice softening, taking on a tender urgency. "Trust me, Evelyn," he murmured, his eyes searching hers. "Everything will make sense soon enough." But would it? Her stomach twisted with a growing sense of dread. She had noticed the inconsistencies, the way Liam never seemed stressed about finances despite their modest lifestyle, the way he casually rattled off car specifications like a seasoned collector, the way he handled wine with the expertise of a trained sommelier. And now, the hidden stash of money. A horrifying thought crept into her mind. Was Liam involved in something illegal? The floor creaked beneath her as she shifted her weight, the sound amplified in the tense silence. Liam's head snapped up, his eyes suddenly guarded. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, Liam closed the drawer, his fingers tightening around the edge, his jaw clenched, his expression unreadable. Evelyn forced herself to find her voice. Where did that money come from? Liam sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. It's not what you think, Evelyn. Her chest tightened. Then explain it to me. Liam hesitated, just for a second. But that second was enough. Are you? Evelyn swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. Are you in some kind of trouble? Liam's gaze darkened. No. Then why are you hiding stacks of cash? Her voice rose, tinged with desperation. You act like we can barely afford groceries, but you have thousands of dollars sitting in a drawer. What the hell is going on? Liam exhaled sharply, frustration flickering across his face. Evelyn, just trust me. Trust you, she scoffed, her voice laced with bitterness. How can I trust you when you keep secrets from me? Liam's eyes flashed with anger. I could ask you the same thing. You married me thinking I was just some poor guy, and that was fine, right? But the moment you see money, you assume the worst. Evelyn opened her mouth to retort, but Liam cut her off, his voice rising in intensity. You think I'm a criminal, he snapped, his voice laced with hurt. Evelyn flinched, guilt washing over her. She hadn't voiced it outright, but had she subtly implied it? Liam shook his head, his voice quieter now, but laced with a raw vulnerability. I thought you saw me for who I was, not for what I had, or didn't have. Evelyn's throat tightened with remorse. I do, she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. Liam's jaw worked, his hands clenching into fists. Then, he turned away, his shoulders slumped with defeat. Then act like it, he muttered, walking out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there, more confused and conflicted than ever. The next day, Evelyn couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that she was missing a vital piece of the puzzle. Liam was concealing something significant, and she was determined to uncover the truth. That afternoon, while sorting through some old books in their cluttered apartment, she stumbled upon a yellowed newspaper clipping tucked between the pages. Her pulse quickened with anticipation. It was an old business article, dated 3 years prior. And right there, in the center of the page, was a photograph of Liam, or at least, someone who bore an uncanny resemblance to him. But the name beneath the photo wasn't Liam. It was Liam Alexander Sterling. Her fingers trembled as she read the headline, Billionaire Heir Disappears Without a Trace, The Mystery of Liam Sterling. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Who the hell had she married? The farmer's market buzzed with vibrant energy, a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds. The air was thick with the enticing aromas of freshly baked bread, ripe fruit, and roasted coffee beans. Evelyn and Liam, hand in hand, navigated the bustling crowd, their Saturday ritual a welcome escape from the pressures of their daily lives. Evelyn had grown to cherish these simple moments, finding a sense of peace and normalcy amidst the chaos. She reached for a bundle of ripe strawberries when a voice, sharp, mocking, and sickeningly familiar, pierced the air from behind. Well, look who it is. Evelyn froze, her blood turning to ice. Slowly, she turned, her heart pounding in her chest. There they were, Daniel and Lisa, standing in the middle of the market, radiating an aura of disdain. Daniel, in his expensive, tailored suit, Lisa clinging to his arm, her eyes radiating an icy contempt. Evelyn's stomach churned. Liam, sensing the shift in her demeanor, placed a reassuring hand on her lower back. Friends of yours, he asked casually, though a subtle edge laced his voice. Evelyn exhaled slowly, struggling to maintain her composure. Something like that. Daniel smirked, his eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. I must say, Evelyn, I almost didn't recognize you without your designer dresses and diamond jewelry. Lisa let out a disdainful laugh, appraising Liam from head to toe with undisguised contempt. And this must be your husband? Her tone dripped with condescension. Liam remained silent, his expression unreadable, but Evelyn could feel the tension coiling in his body. Daniel crossed his arms, clearly relishing her discomfort. It's quite pathetic. You used to be someone, Evelyn. And now you're married to a man who can barely afford a decent pair of shoes. Evelyn's blood boiled. How dare he? Liam had been nothing but kind and supportive, nothing but patient and loving. And yet, Daniel, with his shallow, materialistic arrogance, dared to stand there and belittle him. Evelyn lifted her chin, her eyes blazing with defiance. "At least he loves me," she said, her voice steady and proud. Daniel's smirk faltered for a split second before he erupted in a cold, mocking laugh. "Love? Oh, Evelyn, that's cute. But let's be honest, love doesn't pay the bills." Lisa leaned into him, her red lips curling into a wicked smirk. "And let's be honest, what does your husband have to offer besides that old jacket?" Evelyn's fingers clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms. But before she could unleash her fury, Liam finally spoke, his voice deceptively calm. "I have enough." His tone was smooth, unbothered, but his eyes held a different story. They were dark, calculating, as if he were privy to a secret that the rest of them were oblivious to. Then, he smiled, a small, knowing smile that sent a shiver down Evelyn's spine, as if he were holding a secret that could shatter their carefully constructed reality. Daniel frowned slightly, as if for the first time, he sensed that something was amiss. Lisa, however, merely scoffed. "You're delusional." But Liam simply tilted his head, his smile never faltering. And Evelyn, standing beside him, couldn't shake the feeling that the game was about to change, in a way that Daniel and Lisa would never see coming. The apartment was silent, save for the soft ticking of the antique clock on the wall. Evelyn sat on the couch, her heart pounding, her hands trembling as she clutched the letter she had just discovered. The name emblazoned on the envelope burned into her mind, Liam Alexander Sterling. Not Liam Carter. Not Liam Smith. Liam Alexander Sterling. She knew that name, every socialite in Manhattan did. The Sterling Empire was one of the most powerful conglomerates in the country, with vast holdings in real estate, technology, and luxury brands. But 3 years ago, after a scandalous family feud, Liam Sterling, the sole heir, had vanished without a trace. And now, he was sitting in their cramped apartment, pretending to be just an ordinary man. Evelyn's stomach churned. This wasn't just a secret. This was a deliberate deception. Liam walked through the front door a few minutes later, casually tossing his keys onto the table. He glanced at her and smiled, as if nothing were amiss. But everything was wrong. "You're home early," he said, shrugging off his jacket. "I was thinking of making pasta tonight, unless you're craving something else." Evelyn remained frozen, her fingers gripping the letter so tightly that it crinkled beneath her touch. Finally, she found her voice, her tone flat and accusatory. "Liam Alexander Sterling." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Liam's movement stilled. Slowly, his eyes lifted to meet hers. There was no confusion, no shock, just a quiet acceptance. Evelyn swallowed hard, her voice cracking. "That's your real name, isn't it?" Liam exhaled softly, running a hand through his hair, his face unreadable. "Where did you find that?" he asked, his voice calm, almost resigned. "That's not the point, Liam," she snapped, standing up, her emotions threatening to boil over. "The point is, you lied to me. You let me believe you were just some regular guy, when in reality, you're a billionaire." He finished the sentence for her, a small, sardonic smirk playing on his lips. Evelyn's heart twisted. "This isn't funny," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why? Why didn't you tell me?" Liam sighed, leaning against the counter, folding his arms across his chest. "Because I didn't want you to love me for my money," he said simply, his voice devoid of emotion. Evelyn froze, the truth of his words cutting deep. She had been raised in a world where money was the ultimate currency, where people married for status, for power. She had nearly married Daniel, a man who had seen her as nothing more than a bargaining chip. And now, standing before her was Liam, a man who had chosen to walk away from immense wealth in search of something authentic. And he had chosen her. A tear slipped down her cheek. Liam stepped closer, his voice softening, taking on a tender urgency. "I never meant to hurt you, Evelyn," he murmured, his eyes searching hers. "But now that you know the truth..." I have to ask. He lifted a hand, gently cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing away the tear. Do you still love me? He asked quietly, his voice laced with vulnerability. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest. Did she? After all the lies, after all the deceptions, did she still love Liam? The answer was a resounding yes. Because for the first time in her life, money didn't matter. He did. The rooftop was bathed in the ethereal glow of fairy lights, a soft jazz melody drifting through the air. A gentle evening breeze carried the intoxicating scent of fresh roses, mingling with the warm flicker of candlelight that illuminated an elegantly set table. Evelyn stared in awe, her breath catching in her throat. The scene was breathtaking, too perfect, too surreal. She turned to Liam, who stood beside her, his hands tucked into his pockets, watching her reaction with quiet amusement. You did all this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Liam smirked. "I had some help." Evelyn let out a breathless laugh, shaking her head in disbelief. "You know, most regular guys don't have access to rooftop venues and private chefs." Liam chuckled, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Guilty as charged." He reached for her hand, leading her towards the table, pulling out a chair for her before taking his seat across from her. The dinner was exquisite, delicate bites of gourmet dishes paired with a bottle of rich, velvety wine that Liam expertly poured into her glass. But despite the stunning surroundings and the impeccable service, Evelyn couldn't shake the underlying anxiety that churned within her. A part of her still struggled to reconcile the Liam she had come to love with the billionaire heir he truly was. "You're quiet," Liam observed, watching her intently. Evelyn sighed, setting down her fork. "I guess I'm still processing everything." Liam nodded, as if he understood the complexities of her emotions. "Because of the money?" Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. "It's not that I care about wealth, Liam," she clarified, her voice earnest. "It's just, this world of yours, the one you walked away from. It's so different from mine. What if I don't fit in?" Liam leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers, his gaze intense. "You think I care about any of that?" Evelyn opened her mouth to respond, but Liam suddenly stood up, his movements fluid and graceful. And then, he dropped to one knee. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat, her heart hammering against her ribs. Liam retrieved a small velvet box from his pocket, his hands trembling slightly. Slowly, he flipped it open, revealing a dazzling diamond ring, shimmering under the rooftop lights. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Evelyn," he said softly, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I don't want to just be the guy you married in a drunken moment." He paused, taking a deep breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "I want to be the man you choose. The man who stands beside you not because of chance, but because you want me there." Evelyn felt tears welling up in her eyes, blurring her vision. Liam took her hand in his thumb gently stroking her skin. "Forget the money," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Forget the name. I'm just Liam." A tear slipped down her cheek. Because deep down, she had always known it. He was just Liam. Her Liam. She nodded, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes," she whispered, the word a fragile promise. Liam's face lit up with a radiant smile. In one swift motion, he slid the ring onto her finger, securing their future. Then, he pulled her into his arms, holding her close, his grip tight and possessive. And just like that, she wasn't lost anymore. She had found her home. The grand ballroom of the Sterling Foundation was bathed in a warm, golden light, the gentle strains of a live orchestra mingling with the hum of conversation. Guests, impeccably dressed and radiating wealth, moved elegantly around the room, raising glasses of champagne in celebration. But this wasn't just another superficial high society event. This was Evelyn and Liam's dream brought to fruition. Their foundation, dedicated to providing resources and support for women who had been abandoned, mistreated, or left to rebuild their lives alone, was thriving. Because Evelyn understood firsthand what it felt like to lose everything. And now, she had the opportunity to give back, to offer hope and a second chance to others who had once stood where she had stood. Liam stood beside her, his hand resting protectively on the small of her back, his presence a grounding force as she greeted the guests. She had never imagined her life unfolding this way, not just wealthy, but meaningful. Then, as they greeted the attendees, a familiar voice made Evelyn freeze, a chill running down her spine. "Well, isn't this a surprise?" She turned slowly, bracing herself. There they were, Daniel and Lisa, standing awkwardly near the entrance. But they were different. Gone was Daniel's arrogance, his unwavering confidence. His once impeccably tailored suit now looked slightly worn, the usual smirk replaced with a mask of bitterness. And Lisa, who had once draped herself in luxury and power, stood beside him with an uneasy expression, as if the ground beneath her was no longer stable. Evelyn raised an eyebrow, her expression carefully neutral. Daniel forced a smile, but there was a palpable desperation in his eyes. "You've certainly moved up in the world." Lisa scoffed, her voice laced with thinly veiled resentment. "Enjoy it while it lasts." Evelyn didn't react, her gaze steady and unwavering. She simply tilted her head, her silence more powerful than any retort. "I heard about Lisa's father's company. Tough luck." Liam, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke, his voice calm but firm, carrying an underlying threat. "Business is unpredictable. One wrong move, and everything crumbles." Lisa's jaw clenched, her eyes narrowed with animosity. Daniel's face darkened, his expression a mixture of anger and humiliation. They had once looked down on Evelyn, their wealth and status blinding them to her true worth. Now, they were the ones struggling to stay afloat. Evelyn squeezed Liam's hand, a silent expression of gratitude. Then, she turned back to Daniel, her voice steady and confident. "You know what? I think I should thank you, Daniel." He frowned, his confusion evident. "For what?" "For leaving me that night," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "Because if you hadn't, I wouldn't have made the best decision of my life." She turned to Liam, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. "Him?" Daniel remained speechless, his face a mask of disbelief. Lisa huffed and dragged him away, disappearing into the throng of guests. Evelyn let out a small laugh, shaking her head in amusement. "Poetic justice, don't you think?" Liam smirked, his eyes glinting with mischief. "I prefer to call it karma." The sun cast its golden rays over their private beach resort, the waves gently lapping at the shore. Evelyn sat beneath a large sun umbrella, contentedly watching two small figures, a boy and a girl, race towards the water, their laughter echoing in the tranquil air as Liam chased after them, their joy infectious. Her twins, Leo and Lionel. Evelyn's heart swelled with a love so profound it ached. Once, she had lost everything, her world crumbling around her. And now, she had a family, a purpose, a love that had defied all odds. Liam jogged back to her, the children giggling as they clung to his legs. He leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead, his eyes radiating pure love. "Happy," he murmured, his voice husky. Evelyn smiled, reaching for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "More than I ever thought possible," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. She gazed at her family, at the life they had built together, and whispered, her heart overflowing with gratitude, "You were the best decision I ever made." And so, Evelyn's journey proves that sometimes, life's greatest heartbreaks lead us to our most unexpected and profound blessings. She lost everything, her wealth, her status, even her family. But in that loss, she found true love, discovered her strength, and built a life far more meaningful than she had ever imagined. Liam had never needed his fortune to win her heart. He had only needed to be himself. Together, they had transformed pain into purpose, creating a lasting legacy of kindness and compassion that would help countless others. And in the end, that was the greatest wealth of all. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales of love, resilience, and second chances. See you in the next story.